Hi, I'm here today to introduce you to GnuPharma's ideas on body regulation and balance, as GnuPharma capitalizes on really a new medical system that's been developed. Well, let's talk a little bit about how our bodies regulate. If you ask most scientists or researchers how the body regulates, I think you'll get a myriad of answers because scientists and researchers are really still mystified as to how all this works together. So certainly a lot is known about how organs regulate or particular systems regulate, but not your overall body regulation. So let's go back in time a little bit to the early 1990s. And in the early 1990s, a new medical system was discovered. Many of you may not even realize this. This system has been heavily studied by pharma, which began in about 1995 and is still being studied heavily. This system certainly appears to be responsible for regulation of many of our internal systems. Well, what has pharma done with this new development, of this new discovery, really, of this new medical system? Pharma's developed a few drugs which are sort of dependent on this system or use this new system as therapeutic targets. And in particular, they did this with a drug called Renombant. In Renombant, they did, which was targeted for weight loss. The drug showed tremendous promise for weight loss. In fact, almost every single subject in the clinical trial lost weight. However, it also caused extreme depression, and they actually had some suicides in the trial. But this is still really interesting in that this therapeutic target that Renombant went after certainly showed clinical goodness for weight loss, but also, was affected mood, which is interesting, although it wasn't certainly the result they were after. So why have we not had more products from pharma on this new system? Clearly it has therapeutic value and it has a lot of influence. Well, first of all, they can't make money on it yet. So it's very difficult to develop drugs really for this system without getting into herbal or nutraceutical medicine. And for that reason, they've stayed out of this particular realm. The internal medical system here that we're dealing with is something called your endocannabinoid system, or ECS. Now, very similar to how your endorphin system, which we all know about as an internal neurological system that we all have, is named after morphine. So this endocannabinoid system has been named after cannabis. But really, past that, the sort of differences, there's no association between cannabis and the endocannabinoid system, other than cannabis causes it to light up like a Christmas tree. But certainly other things do too. And that's new information really since 2000. That's the last bullet there. The system was assumed to only be influenceable by cannabis until really the mid-2000s. So let's talk a little bit about GnuPharma. GnuPharma was founded by Chip Paul. Chip is an inventor, he's a researcher, and he's an entrepreneur. And he began this venture in 2013, really after founding a 501c4 called Oklahomans for Health. Oklahomans for Health was focused on the medical marijuana question in Oklahoma. And by virtue of being the leader and founder of that organization, Paul felt like he had to educate himself really about all things medical marijuana. He began to delve into medical marijuana, but quickly found that the medical value in marijuana is not necessarily from the marijuana, it's from the system that the marijuana affects, and that's an internal system that we all have called the endocannabinoid system. Paul quickly realized after reading much studies that this was a very important system and began modeling this system. Well, what exactly did he discover? Well, Paul discovered this, that the endocannabinoid system, first, is as old, if not older, than your central nervous system. And it certainly, if you look at the research, appears to be your everything system. So no one had come along yet and put this together in the way that Paul did, but Paul built a model of this system that he felt like described the human condition. And really, that's what we'll talk about next. So what does this model look like? So let's talk a little bit about Paul's model. Paul really postulated that the endocannabinoid system is very similar to a computer and sensor array system in your vehicle. So very similar to how your vehicle has a computer in it, and that computer is constantly monitoring things like your oil pressure or fuel level or engine temperature, how much it's raining or how much your windshield wipers need to be on. All these things are in a constant state of monitoring by the computer in your vehicle. Now, if things need to happen, that computer will act on them and perhaps change settings or change an array or things like that. So very similarly, Paul's model of the ECS says that humans operate in a very similar fashion. Our brain is our computer, and really the hypothalamus in our brain is acting like the computer system in the car. And our endocannabinoid system is really the mechanism of action through this particular system. So how does this work? Well, the hypothalamus is constantly monitoring us through sensor arrays that we have. In particular, these could be characterized by CB1 or CB2 neuroreceptors. There's other neuroreceptors in this system, GPR119s, GPR55s. But basically, the hypothalamus is in a constant state of monitoring our bodies for changes and basically needed resources and resource levels and injuries and all that type thing. And if something needs to be performed, it uses, again, our hypothalamus will use the ECS as the mechanism of action to perform that action within the body. So it may use the ECS to engage the CNS, it may use the ECS to engage an organ, or it may use the ECS to engage at the cellular level. But all these things are possible and certainly proven by research. So now the big question, is the endocannabinoid system, or ECS, influenceable? And again, this is another thing that Paul developed, is he developed a system based on very little data, but he developed a system of herbal influence of the endocannabinoid system. And certainly this is possible and now known in research that, plant-based flavonoids can strongly affect the ECS. And you can certainly read more about it here and some of the things that research has discovered can affect the ECS. GnuPharma has hundreds of these things now. Why is this important? It's important because GnuPharma's model and Paul's model really is predictive. So what that means is that by stimulating certain neurologies in certain ways, a predicted outcome can be established. And if that predicted outcome isn't met, then that indicates a problem. Further, because of knowing how the ECS works, problem areas can be identified. So basically, by this method, GnuPharma, and Paul in particular, have been able to formulate and build very rapidly a daily pain formulation, which is productized now as something called Relief, a sleep formulation, which is productized now as something called Sleep, a general health formulation, which is productized now in something called Foundation, an herbal nicotine replacement. And again, this was built by knowledge of the ECS and basically how nicotine affects that system and how that could be mimicked and duplicated in different ways. And this is again productized. This is in the GnuPharma system now and also in the PPV system. Very soon we'll have a weight loss product, and this is an engineered product. It's engineered based on differences that obese people have in their ECS versus kind of quote-unquote normal people. And we have an aphrodisiac product in development and many, many others. In fact, almost literally, your imagination is really the only limit here. All right, well, I've enjoyed my time today talking to you about GnuPharma and our ideas on body regulation and balance and how we've utilized this new medical system to build what we think are very valuable herbal supplements and nutraceuticals. Thank you.